How's it going, everyone? Welcome to my channel. My name is Swanee, and today I'm going to be going over some beginner tips for Monster Hunter Wilds. I know there's a lot of new players jumping into the franchise for their very first time, and to be honest, Monster Hunter can be a bit overwhelming sometimes, especially with all their menus and game mechanics and pretty crazy user interface, different things to collect and craft, and that's not even including the actual monster hunting part. So this video is going to be targeted towards you new players or returning veteran players that just want a bit of a refresher before jumping into things. So with that said, if this video helps you out at any point, then consider hitting the thumbs up button and maybe hitting that subscribe button. That way you don't miss out on any future videos, and it helps me out in the algorithm and helps push this video to other new players. So with that said, let's just go ahead and jump right into it. So let's start with some basic tips and work our way up. In any Monster Hunter title, the first thing you're going to want to do before any fight or exploration is make sure you eat a meal. Before any quest, make sure you head to your tent and eat. Eating will give you a temporary stat buff that will give you a huge advantage going into a fight. If you forget to eat, you'll basically be handicapping yourself for no reason. Now, early on, I would recommend that you just do the recommended meal because you aren't going to have very many ingredients, and eating something is better than nothing at all. And then the more hours that you start to sink into the game and the more ingredients you get, you're going to want to eventually manually choose most of your meals instead of just doing the chef's choice. There are a ton of different builds in Monster Hunter, and depending on the monster that you're fighting, you might want to make a meal that gives you some additional attack or maybe some stronger defense. So keep your armor, weapons, and the monster that you plan on facing in mind when you're choosing your ingredients. Then once you find some ingredients in a meal that you really like, make sure to save it to your favorites so that you have quick access to it in the future. The next tip I have for you all is to collect everything. If you see something and it gives you the prompt to collect it, then collect it. There are going to be a lot of things that you can pick up, and you're not going to have any idea what it is or why you need it, but trust me, you are going to need it. You might think you won't need it, but you will. I'm talking bones, bugs, plants, rocks, literally anything. At some point, you will need these items for either crafting armor, weapons, healing items, cooking, or side objectives. And if you get in the habit of collecting everything that you see, that when you do eventually need it, you'll be glad that you already picked some up. It's like the saying, it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. So anytime you defeat a monster, instead of just carving it and then immediately ending the mission, try running around the area in the final couple seconds and collecting any bones, plants, or mining ore that you might find. Another good habit to form is anytime you're riding your secret mount and you have it on auto move, or it's a scripted moment where the game is forcing you to ride alongside some NPCs and you're just kind of looking around, make sure you collect everything while you're on your ride by using your slinger. Luckily, in Wilds, you don't have to manually collect everything on foot like in previous games, which is pretty nice. The next tip I have for you all is for your map, and to some, the map can be a bit much. It can look like a jumbled mess of just a ton of different icons with multiple layers to it, and it can look pretty confusing. Well, what if I told you that you can get rid of a lot of the junk on the map and just show the important things that you need? Well, if you open up your map, down at the bottom left, if you're using a controller, it'll be the directional buttons, and on PC, it's the A and D keys, and these will let you filter a number of different things quickly and easily on your map to make it less cluttered. Here you can quickly cycle between all the different fast travel points that you've unlocked. You can turn on and off monster threat levels. This will show you different zones on the map where you can find different monsters, which is pretty handy if you're searching for a monster that you haven't discovered yet. And most importantly, it lets you filter through all the different icons. This is where you can turn on and off individual things like crafting materials, ammo, small monsters, etc. So for example, let's say you need some thunder bugs. Well, you can just select it here in this menu and then choose to set a waypoint on it and then have your secret take you straight to it. This makes finding specific items for crafting a lot easier and faster. And turning off a lot of the icons when you don't need them can make your map look a lot less cluttered and make the map just a lot better to look at. So definitely take advantage of the filters on your map. Next up is a quick tip, but it's important, and it's anytime you're hunting a monster and they run away from the area, when you're on the run and you have your secret chasing after it, using the auto move feature, While you're traveling, take advantage of this downtime to sharpen your weapons and heal up. You don't want to have to sharpen your weapon mid-fight once your weapon gets dull. So even if your weapon doesn't have that much wear and tear yet, it's probably just a good idea to sharpen it anyway, just to go into the next round of the fight with full sharpness. Same goes for healing. You don't want to push into the next round of the fight while you're already low on health. So definitely take advantage of the travel time when the monster runs away to prepare for the next round of the fight. And the next quick tip is that when you're on low health and about to die, remember to use your Ghillie Mantle to make a quick escape. The Ghillie Mantle by default is saved to your Essential Items tab when you hold down the left bumper or L1, and when you put on the Ghillie Mantle, this basically makes you invisible until you decide to attack again. So if a monster is focused on you, you can instantly break its aggro and then run away to safety. The Ghillie Mantle is also a great way to catch monsters by surprise and get off a powerful sneak attack. This is a great way to get off a ton of damage before the monster even realizes that you're there. The Ghillie Mantle saved my butt a number of different times pretty early on in my playthrough, and I have no doubt that it will save you as well. The next tip is that if you're hunting monsters, keep on the lookout for different things in the environment to help you defeat your target. The monsters will all have a set path that they like to follow, and when you're hunting them along the path, the developers will purposefully place things to counter the monster that you're hunting. Some examples are activating a beehive so that the bees come out and will sting/poison the monster, or maybe you can pull some rocks down from the ceiling onto the monster's head, or maybe it's something as small as a paratoad or a sleep toad's on the ground and you decide to activate it when the monster walks over top of it to temporarily knock the monster out of the fight so that you can get some free hits in. Anything that you see like this in the environment will be a huge help and is basically just free damage, and with some of the monster's crazy large health pools, you're going to need all the help you can get. The next tip is one I'm including because I completely forgot about this, so I'm kind of warning you so that you don't make the same mistake, and it's don't forget to forge some talismans. I went like 7 or 8 monsters into the main story without crafting any talismans because I forgot that they were even a thing. But crafting a talisman can be a big help. Now early on, you aren't going to have very many good talismans to choose from, but any talisman is better than no talisman. All these talismans will give you at least one additional new skill, such as sleep resistance, or maybe some extra defense, or maybe some additional attack, and eventually you will get the option to craft better talismans, and you're going to want one to specifically match your build with your armor and your weapon, but early on, just craft the best one that you can at the time because every additional skill can make a big difference. My next tip is don't be afraid to take breaks from the main story. Sometimes it's better to slow things down and build yourself up before you progress any further. Early on, you'll probably just have some random assortment of gear and mismatched armor from just the random creatures that you've killed, and after a certain point, maybe once you face a creature that was pretty tough, go and make the strongest armor that you can, and then consider going back and farming the same monster a few times just over and over, so that you can get a complete armor set. It's better to have a complete set of matching armor than it is to just throw a bunch of random pieces together. I reached a certain point in the story where some of the monsters were starting to take a long time to kill, so I went and farmed a couple monsters over and over, made myself the strongest weapon that I could, made myself a full armor set, and then suddenly the next 3 to 4 monsters in the main story were just a complete breeze. So once you notice things start to get harder and start to slow down a little bit, it's probably a sign that you need to focus on some upgrades. And speaking of monsters giving you trouble, don't forget to check your monster field guide in the pause menu. Here you'll get some info on each new monster you encounter, such as their weaknesses, what damage type to use against each monster, and what body parts to break to get certain crafting parts. Maybe you're trying to make a new weapon but can't get a certain part to drop from a monster. Well, this field guide will tell you exactly what you need to do to get those specific parts. Once you get into the late game or want to effectively farm specific monsters, it helps to make an entire armor and weapon set that's specifically made to defeat certain creatures. For example, if the field guide tells you that a monster is weak to water attacks and deals fire damage, well then it probably helps to have an entire build that deals water damage and has resistance to fire attacks. So don't sleep on the field guide, it will definitely come in handy whenever you're stuck on a specific monster. So next up, I want to talk about Focus Mode. This is a new feature exclusive to Monster Hunter Wilds, and it allows you to manually aim where your attacks are going to land on the monster by holding down the left trigger. Now when you're fighting monsters, you're going to want to hit the same area multiple times over and over and over, and this will cause a weak spot to show up. So for example, if you want to target a monster's leg, just hit the leg repeatedly over and over, and then eventually a weak spot will show. Now you'll only be able to see where these weak spots are when you're in focus mode, and these will show up as red marks on their bodies. Then once you see one of these weak spots, you're going to want to hit right bumper or R1 on controller, and you'll do a big focused attack on that spot for a ton of damage, and it normally will knock over the monster. Hitting weak spots with focus mode is also how you'll be getting the majority of your broken monster parts for crafting as well, and anytime you break off a part, it will just auto collect into your inventory, which is pretty nice. Now technically you can kill the monsters without even using focus mode, but you'll be doing yourself a disservice and you won't get nearly as many crafting parts. So you're going to want to be in focus mode like 90% of the time when you're playing this game. And make sure you focus on the body parts that the field guide recommends that you hit. Some monsters will have specific body parts that are going to be weaker than others. The field guide will tell you this, so make sure you just focus on those with the focus mode. The next tip might sound simple, but it's to do the side quests. I know a lot of them can be pretty boring and tedious by having you do things like go capture a small lizard or go find me some honey or some herbs. But by doing the side quests, you will unlock a lot of different features that you wouldn't normally have access to, such as having gatherers go out and find you different resources for you passively so that you don't have to farm everything. And a lot of these side quests will provide you with a bunch of resources that are normally hard to find. So a good rule of thumb is anytime you see someone in any of the hub areas that needs your help, consider taking the time to do so, and you probably won't regret it. And then for the next couple of tips, I want to go over a few in-game settings to change that will drastically help you out in the long run. Now first, in the options menu in the first tab on page 3 of the game settings, go down to the secret auto explore, and I recommend turning this off. This is to prevent your secret mount just from wandering off on its own for no reason. Let's say you're looking at your inventory for something. Well, you don't want your secret to wander around while you're doing so. Especially if there's some monsters wandering by, you don't want your secret to just go off wandering and exploring while you're looking at your inventory, and then suddenly you aggro a monster and you're getting attacked, all while you're looking at your stuff. Secondly, on the second tab in the controls menu on page 2, go down to the secret manual controls, then change this setting to type 2. This will make your mount only move when you tell it to in the direction that you tell it to. Now by default, it will just keep its current speed and momentum until you tell it to stop moving. Type 2 controls give you a lot more control over your mount, and it just feels way better in my opinion. No more having your mount run off at full speed in random directions when you hit the pause menu to look at your inventory. As soon as you stop moving, your mount will stop moving. No more having to hold in the trigger button to tell your mount to completely stop. And then next, under the same controls tab on page 2, play around with the aim/focus mode controls. Now by default, it's set to hold left trigger to focus, but I found that switching this to toggle was just a huge help. This makes it just a little bit easier to always keep the monster in your sights and make sure that your swings don't miss. And then the last big setting that I recommend changing is in the camera tab on page 2, and it's the camera distance zoom. Now I recommend cranking this all the way up so that you can see as much of the environment as possible. Some of the monsters in this game are huge and take up your entire screen, and being able to see everything on the monster is a huge help, especially when you're up underneath the big monster. Things can get pretty hectic, and having the camera zoomed out all the way can help you at spotting some of those weak spots on the monsters just a little bit easier. So that is going to do it for everything in today's Monster Hunter Wilds tips and tricks video. Hopefully there was something here that was able to help you out, and if I was able to help you, then consider giving me a thumbs up because it helps me out in the algorithm and it's greatly appreciated. And if you're new here, then why not hit that subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications. That way you don't miss out on any future Monster Hunter Wilds videos. So I hope you all have a great day and have fun monster hunting, and I will talk to you guys next time.